Hi, welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn on AI and disinformation. As usual, we like to give people a few moments to pop on. So we'll start at 12:04 on the dot. Okay, so 12:04 we'll get started. We usually get a lot of people filing in around now. So thank you for being on time and looking forward to the talk.
Yeah, make sure you mention to everybody to mute when they come online. I don't know, Jen, if you can control that, but make sure people are muted.
Yeah, good point. And I can do that, Ed.
Okay. You just dropped the flag. Tell me when you want me to get going.
Yeah, we'll do.
Gin and Juice just joined. That's a great name.
Yeah, I'm changing my name now.
Oh man. My AP in my condo is Benevolent Warlord.
We'll still wait a couple of moments. For those of you who may have just popped in, we'll get started at 12:04 on the money. Or I guess it's my version of 12:04, whatever it is on the machine.
Oops.
12:03, Ed. So for those of you who just joined, thank you for getting here on time. We'll be starting promptly at 12:04. Just giving people some more time to file into the talk. All right, 12:04, Ed, I'll get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tom Kane with the Center for Applied AI here at UMBC Training Centers for yet another talk in our AI Lunchbox series. So thank you very much for joining us, and we appreciate that you are open to giving us the 30 minutes or so of your lunch hour to join us here at the Center for Applied AI. So today we have my colleague Ed Melick to discuss AI and disinformation. AI and disinformation, not information. Ed, that would have been bad. Ed gave a talk on AI and ethics. I don't know, 4 weeks, 5 weeks ago now.
Yeah, probably a month and a half.
Yeah, and while I'm biased, I thought it was a tremendous talk, Ed. In fact,
Uh-oh.
I know it was just it was tremendous talk. So now I'm really setting you up. So anyway, Ed, thanks again for deciding to give a talk here on AI and disinformation, and take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome everybody to the chat. Those of you who had joined 5, 6 or so weeks ago when I talked about AI and ethics know that I mentioned an article that was written recently. It was a survey that was done of literature, and it mentioned that it uncovered about 300 plus ethical issues relating to AI. And it bunched those into 19 groupings. And at the top of the list, the ones that were mentioned the most were issues that were related to toxicity and doing harm to people with AI. And one of the most important things in that category was disinformation and misinformation. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. It turns out that disinformation has been around forever. So if you think about the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, when the serpent approached Eve, that was basically a disinformation campaign. He brought into question what God had said. He was like, did God really say this? And she answered, and he said, no, 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 no. That's not the truth. This over here is the truth. And he convinced Adam and Eve of that, and we had the fall of humanity. So it's been around forever. I actually did a little bit of research. If you just type into Google misinformation, disinformation history, there's a number of really good papers out there that lists historically all sorts of things that have happened. Some of them are harder to verify if it goes back into the BC era, but people like Sun Tzu, who wrote a book called The Art of War, it's very popular in business schools and with strategists, business strategy these days. That was written in the 3rd century BC. And he was a big proponent of deceit and disinformation to gain a war fighting advantage. And another item I mentioned here is Mark Antony. There was Octavian who mounted the disinformation campaign against him back in 44 AD. And he had little expressions. They were Twitter-worthy expressions. He would etch onto coins and circulate them. And in the end, it worked. He became the emperor. So I got a couple of other examples here. I don't want to dwell on the distant past. Getting more recent, if we think about things like Pizzagate, I think this is a great example of disinformation. It's a conspiracy theory that went viral around the 2016 election. Supposedly, a pedophile ring was being operated by Hillary Clinton out of a pizza restaurant in Washington, D.C. To some people, that just immediately sounds absurd. To many people, it was very believable. And there's one particular man who got in his car in North Carolina, drove all the way to D.C. with an assault rifle, went into the restaurant and wound up shooting a lock off a storage room door. And it could have ended much worse than that, but that's what happened. The story has been extensively discredited, but it didn't mean it didn't pick up some big steam and cause some problems. On a much grander scale, we have what happened in the 2016 election with Russian interference. And the CIA and the FBI and NSA have all investigated this extensively. They jointly published a paper. And their conclusion was that there was significant escalation involvement in social media and other things during that election cycle, and it was ordered by Vladimir Putin. And the goal was basically to undermine our democratic order, to promote one candidate while discrediting another. And it was a multi-pronged approach. But the one statistic that stands out in my mind is kind of shocking. And this statistic comes from Facebook, which you'd think they wouldn't admit this. But they believe that Russian-generated posts reached 126 million Americans. That's over half of the voting population here. So that's a big, big deal. There are some very grave outcomes recently. There has been hate speech, radicalization. Posts on social media have led to ethnic cleansing in Myanmar. There was a freeze on social media in Sri Lanka because violence and lynchings were resulting. And then we all heard about the Tops shooting in Buffalo Market. 16 people were killed. And that was in part stoked by a person who was reading some of these radical posts on social media. If we move up to today, we've got the situation in Gaza, which is, it's just simply awful enough. I mean, what Hamas did in Israel and then what Israel is doing now in Gaza, it's a mess. And yet people are taking it up to another level. They're exaggerating atrocities and casualties on both sides to try to promote some sort of an agenda. And it's you know, a situation that's already horrible is being made even more horrible for certain purposes and gains. It doesn't have to always be a terrible thing. I love the fake puffy coat, the Balenciaga coat that someone put on the Pope. Funny image. On the flip side, another example of something bad is there was this fake image on the right that was posted on social media that was a supposed bombing of the Pentagon. It was a very poor image because the building looks nothing like the Pentagon on the right. And there's a lot of indicators in this photo that it's fake. But at one point, the S&P dropped $500 billion in 2 minutes because of this photo. And that just gives you the sense of what one little thing like this can do. It regained its value quick enough once the photo was debunked. But once again, we should all take pause and notice what's happening. So good time to take a pause ourselves and define disinformation. This is basically false information that is deliberately intended to mislead people. It's done maliciously. It's spread with an intent to do harm. This is different than misinformation, which is sharing information that's incorrect, but you're not trying to maliciously harm someone. You're not trying to deceive. And the example I gave the last time was if I was a CFO of a company and I wanted to pump up my stock price, and I played around with the financials a little bit and presented those on a stock call, and people, the stock went up, and then other people shared it. They shared that information because they're excited and giddy about the stock. The first example is disinformation, and the second one is misinformation. Another thing that's good to define is the term deepfake. I think we've all probably heard this again and again these days, but it's good just to set the stage. And it's any image or recording, audio, video recording that's been convincingly altered or manipulated to misrepresent someone saying and doing something that they did not, in fact, say or do. So it's good to kind of get those definitions set up front here. I figured I'd include a slide here to show some of the deepfake milestones, because the term was just coined back in 2017 on a Reddit board. Not long after that, 2018, Jordan Peele, the comedian and director, producer, he created a deepfake video of Obama speaking, and it was Jordan Peele's voice imitating Obama, but it was incredibly convincing, and he was sort of raising the flag, saying this is something that's going to happen more and more, something we should be concerned with. Not long after that, of course, porn always follows quickly through the open door, and someone created an app called Deep Nude. And the Deep Nude, you could take a photo, like say of me with my clothes on, and it would modify that photo with a naked image from the neck down. And it was pretty convincing. And the person who released that, he removed that not long after he posted it. But there's been a flood of other apps since. The first scam I came across was a 2020 scam where someone used an audio deepfake to get someone to transfer $35 million. There may have been others before that. We haven't heard about them because of embarrassment. Facebook banned these images back in 2020. The other companies quickly followed. I think an important milestone was the fake video of Vladimir Zelensky telling his troops in Ukraine to surrender to the Russians. That was in 2022. Some people believe that's the first use of this in sort of the context of war. And another very important thing, given the year that we're in, is there was a fake Facebook audio posted in 2023 that really people believe affected the Slovakia election. It was of two people on the Liberal Party side supposedly talking about rigging the election. It was posted just 2 days before the election, so there was a silent period imposed by the government. People couldn't really raise the alarm and say this is fake because of the silent period. And since it was audio only and posted on Facebook, it did not violate their video-generated policy. So they didn't say much about it. And in the end, the party that they were trying to trash, whoever posted this, won out. The other party won the election. Now, of course, we've had a shooting just in the last couple of days where the prime minister was shot and is in pretty serious condition right now. So these sort of things can have very, very serious consequences. And so that leads us into the logical question of why has this become such a problem, and not such a problem, but such a big problem? Why is it so much bigger and threatening now? So first thing is, in the words of Taylor Swift, faker's going to fake, 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 fake. We have a human nature. It's both good and bad. And the bad side, there's selfishness, there's greed, self-righteousness, all these characteristics that we have and can flare up in any one of us. And we also have bad actors. We got 7.9 billion people on the planet, and there's no shortage of sociopaths, narcissists, psychopaths, and criminals and authoritarians. And that's going to happen no matter what, and it's been happening forever. But there's motivations behind disinforming, political gain, increased power, financial gain, these scams we're hearing about, war-fighting advantage, we're cheering the Ukrainians on because they're using data from companies like Palantir to gain a battlefield advantage against the Russians. People use it to oppress the other, people that are marginalized, groups that are considered oppressed. There's harm, defaming, weakening your enemies. People want to do that. And then there's just a motivation to simply sow chaos and confusion. And we mentioned before this whole notion of flooding the zone with BS and then coming in behind that and leveraging that in some way. So there's no shortages of reasons to disinform. I thought I would throw a couple photos in here. The one on the left is what I call six-finger Trump. Somebody wants you to think Trump is a deeply devout person, so they generated this image using AI, and he has 5 fingers and a thumb on his right hand. And then there's the image on the right, which has been debunked and tested with the countermeasure technology. And it just shows him with young male African Americans, and people are trying to promote something true or false or whatever of Donald Trump. And this is what's happening more and more these days. So again, the reason it's getting out of control is because of really the combination of the power of AI and the reach of social media. AI gives people, every single one of us, a level of power that's never been seen before. You can take text, you can take something existing or create something from scratch, text, audio, images, video. I've even seen videos where someone is walking along and he's on the fly speaking different languages, and his lips are modified in accordance with the language they're speaking. This is done with amazing clarity and incredible power, and it's with little effort, great speed, and costs that are now approaching zero. That's a sobering thing. It can do wonderful things and it can do some very bad things. If you couple that with social media's reach, turns out over 5 billion people are using social media worldwide these days. For people who are using it, they're using typically an average of 6.7 apps per month, different platforms they're on. And they're usually on it for 2 hours and 25 minutes, the average person per day. So the breadth and the depth of social media involvement is humongous. To make matters worse, the spread of disinformation and false information is way faster than the spread of truth. And this study done by MIT, they published an article on this, and the quote on the upper right is really sobering because it says that they found that falsehood diffuses significantly faster, farther, deeper, and more broadly than truth in all categories of information, and in many cases by an order of magnitude. So it could be tenfold faster spread of this information. And this reminds me of a quote by Mark Twain, who didn't even live in the age of social media. He said, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes." And this has been hypercharged with AI and social media. So I'll give you one example. There was a young man who had a name Twitter handle of Overlord Kraken one, and during the Kentucky governor's race, he posted the post on the right. He said, "Just shredded a box of Republican mail-in ballots. Bye bye Bevin." And Bevin was the Republican candidate for governor. He had 19 followers. He had never seen a mail-in ballot in his life. He had never been to Kentucky. And he was interviewed later and he said, "I just wanted to get a few reactions from some boomers. I thought it was funny." This thing blew up. It was viewed by at least hundreds of thousands of people, if not over 1 million. And it led to just a firestorm of accusations and trouble. And the loser of the election, which did turn out to be Bevin, he refused to concede the election for 9 days. So this turned into a big mess in just some young college student playing around with Twitter and posting something. So I figured I'd put a formula in there. Tom, you're a technical guy. You appreciate this. The combination of AI and social media multiplied times every one of our bad human nature plus bad actors that are out there equals really, really serious trouble. And that's a potent formula. So I'll give you some statistics to back all this up. A company called Deep Media estimated that the global impact of deep fakes was about $10 billion in 2022. They're projecting that this is going to be $500 billion, $500 billion in 2030. I think this is an underestimate. We have 2 billion people going to the polls this year in 65 countries. And if they do the same thing that was done in the Slovakia election, watch out. Who knows what kind of an impact this can have on economies around the world and the global economy. Another company called SumSub estimated that deep fakes increased tenfold simply from 22 to 23 in just 1 year. Most of that was in the crypto sector, followed by the fintech sector. I think that's going to swing really heavily this year to just general politics and misinformation, disinformation in that area. And just to show you that people are aware of this, that it's a problem, they want to see accountability. Another organization did a survey, and 84%, that's a lot of people in a survey, of people thought that the companies developing these models that are being abused should be held liable for that abuse. That's a real telling statistic. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's something that's very revealing.
Hey, Ed, before you move on, just if you don't mind me asking real quick, when you say the crypto sector is number one, 87% of cases for deep fakes. What do you mean by that? And
I
what
think that people spreading disinformation and misinformation in an effort to, say, pump up a particular crypto,
Okay.
a cryptocurrency, or knock it down to inflate or deflate prices. I think that's mostly what's going on.
So financial gain.
Yep, exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
So, oh, please, you go. So the other problem is that deep fake, sort of the whole deep fake is just running rampant. We're developing these technologies at a really rapid pace, and we're not developing the countermeasures and the structures to put in place to make sure they're operating safely and responsibly. I'll just show you some priorities. I see Sam Altman speak all the time. He always sounds so calm and so even-tempered. But some of the things he says, he throws around tens and hundreds of billions of dollars and trillions of dollars with just effortlessly. And at Stanford, he recently, I'm quoting him, he says, if we burn 50 billion per year, that's a lot of money. I don't care, he said. We're making AGI. It's going to be expensive, and it's going to be totally worth it. Well, the numbers from 2023 really bear that out. The venture capitalists and the tech giants spent about $27 billion creating Gen AI technology. They spent way, way less than that on deepfake detection and other countermeasures. I just put the mathematical symbol, significantly less than. I couldn't find numbers because no one's doing it. I found one article on VC spending, and it showed about 6, 7 companies, and the spending was 1 and 3 and 10 million. If it cleared $100 million, it was a lot. The motivations are not there. People are making money with Gen AI. They're not making money anywhere near as much trying to counter disinformation. So it's not a moneymaker, and that's where the priorities are. I personally feel something big is going to happen in the weeks and months ahead, and that's going to correct this somewhat, but I'm afraid of what that something is. So there's a sobering truth. I listened to an interview of the former director of machine learning ethics, transparency, and accountability at Twitter. And oh, by the way, the whole group was practically dismembered, I'll say, by Elon Musk at Twitter. She thinks it's an insurmountable problem. It's a near impossible task to tackle. It is significant. I feel like what's going to happen is we can try to get it under control to a significant level. We'll never be able to fully control it, but hopefully the real bad stuff will somehow manage. But people are very concerned. So what is being done? A lot. It's fragmented, it's disjointed, but a lot is being done. There's basically rules and regulations. The EU came out with the EU AI Act this year, and that's really the most sweeping regulations that have come out. President Biden signed the executive order for AI, responsible AI, back in October 2023. There are a lot of fact-checking services popping up. I have a favorite now that I'll mention later. There's even crowdsourced fact-checking. Someone at the conference last week pointed me to a company called Kofax in Taiwan. And there was actually a study done of their effectiveness of their site, and it's equal to or better than the fact-checking sites that are out there. They're taking sort of a crowdsource approach of inviting people to be on the lookout for the fake news and to check it, post it, and it's been very effective. I'd like to see this pick up a lot more even in the US. There are detection tools, media literacy and education sites. There's the good old-fashioned content moderation and deplatforming at the social media companies. There are some organizations popping up. There's a group called Humane Intelligence. These are collections of independent and diverse people, experts, who will come in and they'll give oversight and audit some of the work you're doing, the products you're developing, things like that. So a lot of activity going on out there. And then there's just good old-fashioned defamation lawsuits, which, they have teeth. They take a long time, but they have teeth. I wanted to mention a few detection tools here. It's tough mentioning this because I tried to really find out the effectiveness and accuracy of these things, and it's all over the board. I was kind of shocked that OpenAI, the granddaddy of Gen AI tools, created a classifier that they themselves admitted was only 26% accurate. That's shocking. They had a press release about that in early 23. And 6 months later, they announced at that very site that they were pulling it off the market because it was ineffective. Now, there are other tools. There's probably 30 or 40 of them out there, and this is for text classification, whether it's AI generated or human. There's a company called Originality. It's done a lot of blog posting. I invite you all to go to their site. They've got some really good recent blog posts. They claim a 99+% accuracy in their true positives. We're actually talking internally here at UMBC about doing some analysis of these tools and third party, because Originality, they're a company making a tool. Of course, they're going to talk big about their product, but we were going to try to maybe do an analysis of this and see what the results truly are. There's Intel Fake Catcher. They have a tool that looks at the blood flow in your face in a video and judges whether it's fake or not. That was released in 2022. I can't see a lot more information on that. I don't know if they rebranded it or what they're doing. So there's some things out there. There's some things that were posted are being pulled back. It's a real wild, wild west. And I'll just show you a quick image. This is from the originality.ai, some of these statistics that they gathered, the results of their true positives, false positives, and whatever in testing their tool. So I'm kind of anxious to dig into that and see if that's true or not. Everyone seems to agree that a multi-layer approach is going to be needed. You can't just do one thing. You can't just have regulations or detection tools. You really got to take a bunch of things and mash them together intelligently. One person who's an expert at this, works out of the Berkeley AI lab, suggested this approach where you have tools that you put technology on every device where it captures credentials right when something's created. The picture's taken, its location, its time and date, other characteristics of the picture. There's a firm called TruePic, which is partnered with Qualcomm, which is doing this. They're taking the C2PA content credentials and they're making sure they're captured on the Snapdragon chipset. This is a big deal because Snapdragon is on a lot of devices, and to really have something take off, you've got to get it on the silicon. And I was really happy to hear that they're working together on implementing this on the chipset. On the other end of the scale, you've got server-side generated content. This is the Gen AI companies. When I come to there and I generate a photo or an image or whatever, he says that these companies should be watermarking and fingerprinting every piece of content that's created. And then you have it on both sides, wherever it's generated. You match that up with content analytics, the deepfake detection tools, things like that. And you match that up as well with regulatory pressures, hopefully that have meaningful rewards and punishments. And that's one possible approach. And that's kind of happening now. But again, it's very piecemeal, and we need to somehow people to motivate us to bring it all together in some way and help it to work together in a cohesive fashion. So here's the drum roll section is, well, what can you do? What are you going to be able to do? Well, the first thing is don't be a victim. Take an active role in this. Get educated, and create a toolkit. Find the fact-checking site that works best for you, and there's a whole host of them out there, and start using it. And get educated. Go to some of the media companies that offer educational tools and statistics and other information. Start using those. Create a personal toolkit. Step up and seek truth and balance. We all have a confirmation bias, period. We have itching ears. We want to hear and see what we want to hear and see. Recognize that in yourself. Try to humble yourself, calm down, and even more important, get out of your echo chamber. If you're on in one camp, step over the boundary, hang out with people who have very different opinions than yours, and just try to be truthful, balanced, and humble in your approach. Another thing that's really important is slow down. Especially if you read something on social media or see something and you see your blood boiling or blood pressure rising and you want to anxiously respond, that's when you really need to stop. And especially don't take the bait from trolls who are trying to engage you and argue with you. Slow down, take your time before you respond, do some investigation, and then respond later. But take a day and respond the next day. And also know that disinformation sometimes takes the form of things like irony and memes, and even celebrating in sort of a mocking way, people being demonized, people being discredited. So you have to understand those subtleties as well. And finally, encourage others to do these same things. We all know the exponential growth of something. If you tell two people these things and encourage them periodically to do this, and they each tell two people to do it, and they each tell two people, in no time at all, it spreads like a wildfire. It's sort of a bottom-up campaign. So I encourage people to do that. Under the itching ears category, people just nowadays, there's tens of millions of people out there that just they refuse to believe a mountain of evidence that you give them on something. That's a big problem. And I frankly don't know what to do. I'm quoting here this gentleman, Hani Farid from Berkeley Artificial Lab. He's like, it's easy to deny these things. And some people he's encountered just simply say, I don't care what you say. This conforms to my worldview, and this is what I'm going to believe. The other thing I invite people to do is not only don't be disinformed, but don't be a disinformer. And we spoke about this the last time I gave a presentation on ethics, that the power of constantly reminding yourself of your moral code, that has a powerful effect. And whether that moral code comes from your religious background or you're an atheist, but you just know that compassion and truth and justice are really important things, remind yourself of these things, especially when you're engaging on social media. And again, the same thing as I mentioned before about not being disinformed, but is, check yourself, humble yourself, pause and slow down. In this case, don't share anything unless you know it's true. If you see something that, is really riles you up, take the time to investigate it. And I'm going to mention some sources you can go to do that. And the other thing is, don't amplify harmful content. If something is really malicious and harassing and all, don't share it, period. Even if you agree with it or think it's funny, just don't do it. Don't be that person. So, and again, encourage others to do these same things. So I'll close out with some, sort of more bad news. There's an NIT professor who said that we're teetering on the brink of the end of reality. This is a big deal. If we reach some sort of a point where we can't tell truth from fiction, the next person I quoted is Hani Farid again. He says, how do you have a society? How do you have a democracy? How, if you can't agree on basic facts? And he said, we should disagree about what to do with the facts, but we shouldn't be disagreeing about the facts. And when I think of people using terms like alternate facts or whatever, it just blows my mind. We need to check ourselves and not worry about what the next guy is doing. Check yourself and make sure you behave properly. A couple more hard questions I wanted to include here. I don't have the answers, and I want to invite all of you to get on the Slack group, the Center for Applied AI. And if you have thoughts about this, let's get a dialogue going on the ethics section. Hard questions. How do you balance enforcing guardrails with free speech? Who's going to be the arbiter of those guardrails, and what should and should be considered truth? How do we deal with people who willfully, even happily, deny truth? How do you build a deep resiliency and a resistance to this disinformation and misinformation in our culture, into our culture? And then there are things out there, news sources that are just, I won't even call them news sources, disinformation sources that are just cult-like. People follow those. How do you counter something like that? It's very, very difficult to do. So I wanted to share these questions at the end of the presentation, get everybody's juices going, and invite people to get a dialogue going with us on Slack. So I promised you I'd give you some resources. I had a longer list in the last presentation that had a lot of stuff all over the board. I personally believe that the Google Fact Check Explorer is better than any fact checker that's out there. It's really a clean interface. I've gone to Snopes. I've been to PolitiFact, a lot of other ones. This one is good, and I'm going to show you a screenshot in a second. You kind of put in a question. Well, I'll get to it in a second. News rating sources. There's something called NewsGuard out there that I was impressed with. Deepfake detection. There's a company called True Media with some pretty big hitters who are developing a tool, but you have to initially ask for permission to use it. They're planning to release it to the general population many months before the election, but it's not there yet. And I've applied for permission to play around with it. There's a really good media literacy site called MediaWise. It's kind of geared towards younger people, but that makes them explain people in a much simpler way. So it's a good site. I have a number of people around me who like it and have suggested it. And then there's a news source called Ground News. And whenever there's a particular story, they'll post articles from all different perspectives. They'll have it from far left to far right and everything in between. And they'll weight it. They'll say, hey, we've got 80% articles, they're colored red because they're right-leaning, 20% are left, or maybe there's white in the middle, there's 10%. And they'll put that in. And if you're really honest with yourself and you're willing to look at all sides of a particular story, you can go to that site and see different articles from different perspectives. This is the Fact Check Tools snapshot. I put in a question about this. It popped back 16-20 articles that are very related to the question I put in. And this is where other sites struggle. I would put a specific question in, and it would send a bunch of stuff back to me where I'm like, no, it's not really related to my question. This was very close, and they would have different articles about different false statements from Newsweek, from PolitiFact, from USA Today, a fact checker, all sorts of different sources, and they would give you ratings: false, 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 true, pants on fire, false. Good site. Check it out and try it out. And then this is super simple. I added the NewsGuard plugin to my Edge browser. And every time I type something in and it pops up articles, this particular queue I did, I got an article, some things from AP News. They rate them as a 95%. They take these sort of 9 criteria of faithful journalism and they apply it to the sites and then rate them. Certain sites I went to got a 7% rating. Some of them had a 50%. And given my knowledge of this, they were pretty dead on. I agreed with them. So I like that site. So that kind of wraps it up. I did want to mention at the end here that we have new dates coming up for new presentations. You can see the listings here. And we've got a technical meetup that's going to be coming, and our second in-person meeting on June the 13th. So I wanted to make sure I showed these things and made people aware of some of the things that are coming up for our lunchbox webinars. But that kind of wraps it up. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I tried to keep it under 30 minutes. Did I succeed, Tom?
You did well again, Ed. Thank you
Thanks.
very much. Great engaging talk. One quick question relative to the resources. Can you share, obviously those resources, they don't have the URLs showing in the hyperlink.
Yep. I will go back. I'll put some stuff on the Slack group, the ethics site. I'll go back to that and stick some links in. Does that sound good?
Yeah, because I never heard of the Google Fact Check Explorer.
It's very new,
I'm
very new.
sorry.
And they've got other tools too. If you go look at it, they've got a markup tool and some APIs where you can plug in with it. So they've kind of come on the scene. And it's, again, I like the results I've gotten with this tool.
Well, you got thank you. Best presentation I've seen on this series. Thanks for the insights, Ed. Now you're raising the bar. I'm going to have to do better with the GPT 4.0. So, well, thank you very much, Ed, and thank you everyone for attending yet again. We will post, I think we both post the slides and then send them out to people who register, but we will definitely post these slides on our Center for Applied AI Slack workspace. So maybe put that back up, Ed, so that the QR code, in case that you are not part of the Slack workspace, you can use the QR code to sign up, but we will get those out on the Slack workspace. And there we go. Thank you, Jen, for also posting in chat an easy link to go ahead and join the Slack workspace. And would love to see people talk about those. You'll have to also post the questions, Ed, in the Slack workspace and see if we can get some things, some people chatting about the questions. Tough questions. And the only thing I go back to, Ed, is I was a crypto guy earlier in my career, and for centuries it was a cat and mouse game of making and breaking codes, right? So maybe that's what we're going to see for the next couple centuries, about the making of disinformation and the breaking of disinformation. Let's see. So thanks again, everyone, for attending, and have a wonderful day.